الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآله. After having seen that indeed, since Allah Azza wa Jal is a wise creator, He has facilitated for our guidance in this world. As we look around ourselves, we find that there are other human beings who do not follow the same religion as we do. We have those, for example, whom we call the Ahlul Kitab, who are those who follow the divine books, like the Jews and the Christians. And we have those who are not Ahlul Kitab, who do not follow any of the divine books, for example, the Buddhists and others. So how are we meant to interact with those people who are not Muslims? One of the contemporary issues that has been raised and that we wish to discuss tonight with the help of Allah Azza wa Jal is the issue of religious pluralism, which means, do we understand all the religions to be different ways to the same goal, to be different ways to Allah? Or do we say, no, we are exclusively those who follow the right way to Allah, with the exception of those who claim to be Muslims but do not actually practice Islam? Otherwise, we do not agree to the fact that other faiths are equally true and equally right. This is the question we want to discuss tonight, inshallah. So, there was a professor by the name of John Hick. He lived in the past century. He died just last year in 2012. He was one of the first people to bring up the idea of religious pluralism. When we say religious pluralism for this session, the definition is all religions lead to Allah. All religions lead to God. So we cannot say we are right, the rest are all going to the fire of hell. No. That is what religious pluralism means. So one of the first proponents, the first advocates of religious pluralism was a professor known as Professor John Hick. Now, Professor John Hick said that all the religions in the world are the same. There are some minor differences between them. We can divide religions into three categories. One, the teachings of religion that are historical. Two, the teachings of religion that are trans-historical, and 3, the real, the true. As far as the real, he says all the religions have the same real. When we say here real, it's with a capital R. That means the core of every religion is the same. The core. So you can imagine if you have a shell and you open it, inside is the core. Professor John Hick was saying the core of all religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, the core is the same. The problem lies with the outer shell. There is some differences with regards to the outer shell. And the outer shell is made up of historical issues and trans-historical issues. Historical like what? Like, was Jesus crucified or not? That's a historical issue. He said if you want to differ on a historical issue, it's very easy. You can do your research, you can send archaeologists, they can dig and find out, is there any empirical data, is there any proof to show that Jesus was crucified or not? So you can solve these differences which are historical. The differences which are trans-historical are differences like what will happen after death. Christians say something else, Muslims say something else, Jews say something else. So Professor John Hick says when there are these kinds of differences, you can keep all the differences away and say they are all mythology. None of it is, we are all wrong basically. So historical, we'll research to find out who is right. Trans-historical, all of us are wrong, we've made up stuff. And the real, the core is the same. So if that is the case, we just have to accept the idea that all religions lead to the same goal. Now there is an interesting story that those who want to teach pluralism, they give this story. You must have heard it. There were a group of blind men who came across an elephant. One blind man, he feels the trunk of the elephant and he says, this is a snake, something like a snake. Another blind man, he feels the ear of the elephant and says, no, this is a fan. Another blind man, he feels the leg of the elephant and he says, this is a pillar. Another one feels the back, he says, this is like a throne. Another one feels the tusks, he says, this is something sharp like a sword. All of them are feeling different parts of the same animal, but it is the same elephant. And so they say, therefore, that why should we say that only we are right and everyone else is wrong? No. Everyone in their own way is right. This is the kind of arguments that they give. Now today, in our current situation, we have an added problem, and that is the problem of blurred identity. There is a scholar by the name of Shafiq Virani who has written an article entitled Taqiyya and Identity in a South Asian Community. A very interesting article. It is also available on the internet. If you get time, go and read this article. He talks about a community in Bhavnagar who are known as the Guptis. And he tells us about this community and he says that these Guptis of Bhavnagar, if you ask them what is your religion, they will say Hindu-Muslim or Muslim-Hindu. So how can you be Muslim and Hindu? How can you be these two at the same time? And so he does his research in this paper and he shows us how this community were initially a community of Ismailis, but at the time of the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, who died in 1707, this emperor used to punish those who are not Sunni Muslims. There was like an inquisition, and he would look for Muslims who are professing other branches of Islam and other sects of Islam, and he would punish them. So they did taqiyya. Now normally when people do taqiyya, you do taqiyya to pretend to be a Sunni. But this community, they did taqiyya to pretend to be Hindus. And as the years passed, because they did taqiyya into Hinduism, now, if you ask them who they are, they'll say Hindu Muslim. I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim. If you tell them, are you Hindu or Muslim? They say, why do you want to separate the two? I'm Hindu Muslim. So this is a case of blurred identity. So now if you're talking about pluralism, what would you say to these people? If you say, no, Islam is the only right way, what would you say to these people who call themselves Hindu Muslims? So that is an added problem. And the final point I want to mention about what the pluralists say before we start giving them our reply is that, look, if you don't accept our ideology, if you don't accept the pluralistic worldview that everyone is correct, then you will be part and parcel of a system which is at each other's throats. People for centuries have been killing in the name of their religion. The Christians have killed in the name of Christianity in the Crusades, for example. Even the Muslims have killed in the name of Islam. Even the Jews killed and continue to kill in the name of Judaism. So you are part of that system. Why don't you come to our side? The pluralist will say. Look, we say we are all right. We can all coexist. Rumi, in his Mathnawi, has an interesting anecdote. He says, one day there was a Persian, a Turk, an Arab, and a Greek. There were 4 people traveling together. And as they were traveling together, they came across 1 dirham. So they were very happy. So now what should we buy with this 1 dirham? The Persian man said, we buy angur. The Arab man said, we buy inab. The Turk said, we buy uzum. And the Greek man said, we buy astafil. And they started quarreling amongst each other. No, we'll buy this. And they were at each other's throats. It became a violent quarrel. At that moment, a wise man was passing by. And he said, what are you quarreling over? It's the same thing. It's grapes in 4 different languages. The Persian will say angur. Angur means grapes. The Arab will say inab, which means grapes. The Turk will say uzum, which means grapes. And the Greek will say astafil, which means the same thing, grapes. So you are fighting for no reason when you all agree on the same thing. This is the argument presented by those who propound the idea of religious pluralism. Now, what answer do we have to give? First and foremost, when we look at Professor Hicks' argument, we find that it is incomplete because he wants us to throw out part of every religion. When he says things which are trans-historical, throw them away. I don't want to throw away anything from my religion. And that idea that the core of every religion is the same, that idea is misunderstood. Why? Because that core is nothing but the fitrah. The fitrah of every human being believes in God. That is what is the core. It doesn't mean that all religions are the same or all religions have the same goal. And so Professor Hicks' ideology and his methodology is not correct. There are some people who suppress their fitrah so much that they become part of a different kind of thinking. Like there is a new type of theology known as misotheology. What is misotheology? That is a theology where they discuss hatred of God. Na'udhu billah. People who hate God. So they suppress their fitrah so much. So as far as his arguments are concerned, we find that they are incomplete. But the obvious answer that we give those people who tell us, no, all religions are the same, all religions are the same, is we know that Allah Azza wa Jal is wise. If all religions were the same, why did Allah send prophets? Why did He send other divine books? Why did he have to send the Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi? If all the religions are the same, if it makes no difference if a person is a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, then why did he have to send the prophets? That is the first question that they have to answer. And secondly, if a Muslim asks you this question, then ask him, why are you a Muslim? You could have been a follower of any other religion. You would not have to fast in the month of Ramadan. You would not have to pray 5 times a day. You are a Muslim, that means there is something in Islam which is not there in other religions. It is something that is so simple to understand, but they try and bring the verses of the Quran and different ahadith to try and prove their case. The verse of the Quran that they use is the verse that I recited in the beginning of this lecture, which was verse 62 of Surah Al-Baqarah, in which Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Those who believe, or those who are Jews, or those who are Christians, or those who are Sabians, as long as they believe in Allah, as long as they believe in the last day and they do good deeds, then they should not worry. They will get their ajr, they will get their reward from Allah, and they won't have to be worried about anything. This is the Quranic argument. And that is why we emphasized so much that the Quran cannot be interpreted like this. And because they have brought a Quranic argument, we have to present them with a Quranic rebuttal. And so we turn to Surah Ali Imran, verse number 85, in which Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Anyone who wants any religion apart from Islam as their deen, it will not be accepted from them. And they will be losers in the hereafter. Now here scholars ask, but here Islam doesn't mean the religion of Islam. The same type of argument which is used in the ayah, Inna ad-deena inda Allahi al-Islam. They say, no, here Islam means submission. It doesn't mean the religion of Islam. Then we say to them that you have not understood correctly. If you look at the Arabic grammar, you will know that this is al-Islam. It is not Islam only. But even if we accept that Islam here means submission, what does submission to Allah mean? If Allah sends a prophet, follow him. Do you agree that Allah sent the Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi? Yes, then you have to follow him. That is Islam. Even the meaning of submission means to submit. So whichever meaning you take it as, the Quran is explicit in telling you that this is the religion that you have to follow. What about the Ahl al-Kitab? What about people who follow the books? Even they have to follow Islam or not? To answer this question, again from the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 47, Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ayyuha alladhina utul kitab, O those who have been given the book, Aminu bima nazzalna musaddiqan lima ma'akum. Believe in that which we have sent, which testifies to the validity of what you had before. The Quran testifies to the validity of Tawrat and Injil. Believe in it, Allah says. من قبل أن نطمس وجوها فنردها على أدبارها أو نلعنهم كما لعنا أصحاب السبت. Do this before we blot out your faces. Look, Allah Azza wa Jal is talking to whom? He's talking to those who follow the books, the Christians and the Jews. And He is warning them. Now I am sending my final prophet with the final message. You better accept the message. Otherwise, we are going to be blotting out some faces. And we are going to be cursing some people like the way we cursed the people of the Sabbath, Ashab as-Sabt. You all know the story of Ashab as-Sabt. Those Jews Those Bani Israel, who at that time were given a test by Allah. The test was what? That on Saturdays, which is your Sabbath day, don't go to the river to fish. That was the test. What is the test? Only on Saturday, give your fishing a break. So they initially accepted and they stopped going to fish. But then Allah made the test a little bit harder, because the fish became aware that on Saturday we can swim freely. So they would notice that Saturday comes and there are so many fish. Sunday, they've all disappeared. Allahu Akbar. Now what do? So they tried to play a trick. They said, okay, we'll not put our nets, but we will just make small traps, small canals, so that the fish can come and swim in and get trapped there, and then on Sunday we will go and remove them from the water. So we are following the rules. Allah Azza wa Jal tells the Ahl al-Kitab, you have to follow what I sent to you with my final prophet, and don't be like these people, because look what happened to them. They were turned into apes. Literally, not metaphorically, literally. They were turned into apes. This was the adhab. So Allah is addressing who? The Ahl al-Kitab, the Jews and the Christians. Become Muslims, follow the religion of Islam. If you know it is true, you have to follow it. Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli also uses another verse to try and counter the argument of those who propound the idea that all religions are equal, all religions are the same, the pluralist ideology. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 135, we are told that the Jews and the Christians say that only those who are Jews and Christians will go to Jannah. The rest are all going to Jahannam. That means it's not only the Muslims who say that we are going to Jannah, the rest not. Even the Jews say we are going to Jannah, the rest not. The Christians say the same thing. Then the Prophet is told, okay, answer them now. Tell them, look, what you believe, I believe. And more, I believe in all that you believe. Your Injil, your Tawrat, your prophets, all of them, I believe in them. And I believe in what Allah has also revealed to me. That is the reply in verse 136. And then in verse 137, Allah tells him, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If these Jews and Christians now believe in your message, then they have been guided. وَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ. But if they turn away, then it is only out of defiance. وَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ. And Allah will suffice you. Wallahu Sami'un Alim. It is only out of defiance, because the message is true. Any person who comes to it with an unbiased mind will recognize that this message is true. They will accept it. Only those who are defiant will turn away. If you look at the example from the life of Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, you know, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam had been given power over the wind, power over the jinn, power over the animal kingdom, the birds. He had been given a lot of barakah and a lot of blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal, a lot of ni'mah. He had power over all these. One day, he is carrying out his routine inspection. Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, if you want to learn how to be a manager, look at Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, because he was managing all these things. They were all under him. He was carrying out a routine inspection of the birds. He goes to look at the birds, one bird is missing. وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرِ. He was looking at the birds. He misses a bird. He says, مَا لِيَ لَا أَرَى الْهُدْهُدَ. How come I can't see the hudhud, the hoopoe? أَمْ كَانَ مِنَ الْغَائِبِينَ. Why is he absent? Then he says, لَأُعَذِّبَنَّهُ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا. I am going to punish this bird with a severe punishment. أَوْ لَأَذْبَحَنَّهُ, or I will slaughter him. أَوْ لَيَأْتِيَنِّي بِسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ, or he will bring a good excuse why he is absent. The bird comes, the hoopoe comes. When he's asked, why were you not here? He starts giving the explanation. He says, I was flying by a place and I saw there was a kingdom ruled by a queen, a woman. So I wanted to inspect further, and when I went close by, I saw that this was an amazing type of people. وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا يَسْجُدُونَ لِلشَّمْسِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. I saw her and her people used to worship and used to prostrate before the sun instead of Allah. Who is saying this? The bird is saying this. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم, and shaitan has made their actions to be beautiful for them. فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ, and he has blocked their path. Look at this. The bird is telling Sulaiman alayhi salam, look, this is what I saw. I saw a community, a people who used to worship the sun instead of Allah. The bird found it amazing. He found it unbelievable. How can human beings worship the sun instead of Allah? So if the idea that if you just worship a Lord, you just worship a God and you are good, you are saved, that is not correct. You have to worship what Allah tells you to worship. Allah tells you worship me, you worship Him. He says how He wants us to worship Him. That is the way we worship. Look at Ibrahim alayhi salam. He tells the people who are worshipping celestial bodies, he goes to them. He joins them. There are some who worship the stars. He comes to them and he says, okay, that is our Lord, that's your Lord, that's my Lord, fine, I take him to be God. Hada Rabbi. No problem. The moment when the star sets, فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ, he says, لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ. I don't like that kind of Lord that sets. Then he goes to another community, they worship the moon. So okay, the moon is God, هذا ربي, okay. When the moon disappears in the daytime, he asks, if my Lord does not guide me, then I will definitely become amongst those who go astray. How can I have a God who disappears? Then who is going to guide me? Then he goes to a community who are worshipping the sun. The sun, the bright, mighty sun. They say, okay, this is our Lord. But when the sun sets, he says, now, inni bari'um mimma tushrikun. Now I disassociate myself with you and the shirk that you are doing. Ibrahim alayhi salam demonstrates to the people practically that what they are believing is not correct. You know, Ibrahim alayhi salam is known as Muhattimul Asnam, the smasher of idols. You know the story of how he smashed the idols. But there is another individual in history also who is known as Muhattim al-Asnam. And that is none other than Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And since we have mentioned his name, whenever we talk of Fada'il brings coolness to the hearts of those who love the Ahlul Bayt. So a few words of Fada'il and then we continue. When Imam Ali alayhi salam was a young boy, one day Abu Talib brings him home and he talks to his wife Fatima bint Asad. He says, Ya Fatima, you know what happened today? Ali he took an idol and he smashed it. I got very afraid that if people see the smashed idol, they will do something. So quickly I collected the pieces and I hid them somewhere. So Fatima bint Asad says, that is nothing. I'll tell you something even more amazing. When he was in my womb, Whenever I wanted to pass the marketplace, whenever I would pass a place where they were selling idols or displaying idols, he would kick me so hard that I would have to change my direction and go from another place. We don't say karramallahu wajha for no reason. The Sunnis don't say karramallahu wajha for no reason. They know that this man never prostrated before any idol. Never. And when they start breaking the idols in the Kaaba, they come to one idol that is on the top. Prophet and Imam Ali are alone. The Prophet says, Ya Ali, who is going to climb? Should I climb on your shoulders or will you climb on my shoulders? Imam Ali alayhi salam said, no, Ya Rasulullah, I will bend down, you climb on my shoulders. So the Prophet climbs on Imam Ali's shoulders. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in the narration, he says, when the Prophet climbed on my shoulders, I felt the weight of the nubuwwah and the risala to such an extent I could bear it no more. I said, Ya Rasulullah, I can't take this weight. It was not just a physical weight, there was a spiritual weight also. Ya Rasulullah, I can't take this weight. So the Prophet said, okay, you climb on my shoulders and break that idol. And when he climbed on the shoulders of Rasulullah, he says in his own words, I felt like I was in the heavens. And he broke the idol. So, Muhattim al-Asnam, the smasher of idols, was Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam and Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. So why do people think that all religions are the same? When we look at the stories of the prophets, we see Sulaiman alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and our own prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What is the event of mubahala? Tell me, O people who say that pluralism is correct. Why would the Prophet tell some Christians who did not accept his message that let us go and do mubahala? What is this mubahala? What is the purpose of doing tabligh and bringing people to the religion of Islam if you say no, all the religions are different ways to Allah? It's not the case. All religions are not equal. All religions are not ways to Allah in equal measure. Do you know how Allah Azza wa Jal describes those who believe Isa alayhi salam to be his son? Look at the verse of the Quran of Surah Maryam, verse number 90. Allahu Akbar. He says, تَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ مِنْهُ وَتَنْشَقُّ الْأَرْضُ وَتَخِرُّ الْجِبَالَ هَدًّا أَنْ دَعَوْا لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدًا. When people claimed that Allah had a son, what happened? The earth was about to split, the heavens were about to rent asunder, the mountains were about to crumble. How can they claim that Allah has a son? You can imagine this is the type of expression that is used in the Quran for those people who claim that Allah has a son. Now you will come and tell me, no, we are all the same. We all have different paths to Allah. We'll all reach Allah. We are all following the same path. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, everyone is equal. How can that be? And one of the strongest evidence against the pluralists is, if you are a true pluralist, then you have to accept me even if I don't accept you. Because you say pluralism accepts everyone to be equal. So I don't accept you to be correct, but you have to accept me. So it is a self-defeating idea. They have to accept the exclusivists also in their camp. So now we have a final question that we need to address. Fine, if you say, okay, these people now, they are not following the true path, does it mean they will all burn in the fire of hell? How can that be? All these millions of people, they'll burn. What about Mother Teresa? What about Gandhi? What about some people who have done good in this world? They're not Muslims. Will they burn in the fire of hell or not? If they do, then we have to doubt now, how can Allah be just? Here we have a man claiming to be a Muslim. Okay, he prays namaz and he fasts, but he's a swindler. He swindles his brother in his business. He's a cheater, he's a liar. He will go to Jannah, but that non-Muslim man or woman who is clean of heart, doing all these good deeds, will burn in the fire of hell. Where is the justice? So the answer here is very simple and very clear. That there are two types of individuals. One is known as Jahil Qasir, and the other is known as Jahil Muqassir. Jahil Qasir is a person who hasn't received the message of Islam. The message of Islam in its correct form has not reached the person. Maybe the only thing he or she hears about Islam is from the media, all the negative. They haven't come across the true Islam. So they are Jahil Qasir. So if a person is Jahil Qasir and they have a clean heart and they believe in Allah and they do good deeds, even if they are Christians, even if they are Jews, whatever they are, Allah Azza wa Jal will reward them. They might be our neighbors in Jannah if we go to Jannah. Then there is Jahil Muqassir. Jahil Muqassir, that is the person who hears about Islam, reads the Quran, knows Islam, and is defiant in not accepting Islam. That person, whether they donate all their wealth or do any other good deed, they will burn in the depths of hell. Because we know that Iman is a condition. There has to be husn fa'ili. The doer has to be good and the deed has to be good. You can't say the deed is good, therefore it's good. No, the doer has to be good. So that solves our problem. Now, but again, Jahil Muqassir, the person was defiant, but he did some good deeds. You mean to say Allah will not pay those good deeds back? Just because he didn't believe in Allah and he was defiant? Isn't this outside the mercy of Allah? Okay, justice we agree. What about the mercy of Allah? So here the answer is that human beings undergo different phases in their life. They die, then they have a phase in the qabr. After the qabr, they have a phase in barzakh. After barzakh, they have a phase in qiyamah. So they will be recompensed, if not in this world, in the grave, if not in the grave, in barzakh. But when qiyamah comes, then they will have to burn in the fire of hell, because they were defiant. And inshallah, through this understanding, we will get a clearer picture about the concept of Islamic theology with regards to pluralism, and the fact that we do not accept the idea of pluralism as far as it be meaning that all religions are equal. Let us pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us a better understanding of Islam, so that we are able to practice Islam the way it ought to be practiced, treating all human beings with respect, whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims, so that we can be good role models for humanity as a whole. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-Tahirin.